afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Live podcast of Discovery Fellowship Church. Back in the studio, finally, I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here with my co-host, Pastor Matt. How are you doing
guys,
today?
I'm good. Actually, I'm not good.
Why aren't you good?
Because in my cup here is some coffee, but it's not good coffee. And it's an abomination.
Okay.
And it's just making me a little bit sad right now.
That is sad.
It's a Keurig coffee, just the like donut shop junk that we have here in the office.
That's the problem.
But the first cup I had, I was just like, man, this is just bad. And so I was like, I want a nice warm beverage while we're sitting in the studio recording, just because I like to have
It's a
coffee
little
or two
bit
while we're doing
cold
this.
today. It's raining outside.
And so I put in cream and sugar.
Oh no,
I regret everything right now, you guys.
That's even worse. You took bad coffee and made it worse.
Yeah,
It's hard to do.
I know.
Well, as always, if you haven't done so already, please take a minute, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you downloaded this episode. It really helps with the algorithms to help new people find the episode, especially if you take a minute, leave us a little 1 or 2 sentence review as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, comment below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, share it with a friend. As always, if you want to be a part of the podcast, you can email podcast@dfchurch.com. That is podcast@dfchurch.com. We'll get to some listener mail, but it feels like it's been a while since we've had a normal episode. Matt, what's going on?
Yeah, it's been a while since
It's been a while.
episode. We were gone for a little bit. The staff and elders were out. We had another one we missed, right?
We had another one that we missed.
We did a replay or something.
I don't know. It's just has been a while.
Yeah, that's crazy. We're back though.
We are back. We are back, baby. Now, we have got so much to talk about today. So let's jump in first and foremost with our news segment. Matt, do you want the funny news or the sad news first?
Let's start with sad. No, let's start with funny. Start off on a high note.
Okay.
And then we'll go to sad.
Because you don't want to be like, oh, that was depressing. Now here's something silly.
Right. Let's start with the silly.
All right. So my first one, I read this actually a week or so ago, but since we didn't have our normal segments last week,
right,
I couldn't feature it. But this was right up my alley and it made me laugh. All right. Here's the headline. AI priest gets demoted after saying babies can be baptized with Gatorade.
I saw that headline. I did not look at anything else in regard to it, just because when I saw the headline, I said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I'm moving on. So tell me, what is it?
Well, all right. So it was a Catholic ministry, Catholic Answers, and they had this thing they called Father Justin, an interactive AI app designed to provide faithful and educational answers about Catholicism using AI, which is great, right? You can ask it all these questions, and it should give you the right answers. But it said that babies can be baptized with Gatorade.
Okay.
It also endorsed marriage between siblings. As well as the other AI hallucinations, as they call it. I'm trying to find like the exact wording. Most people are just referencing what it did, but
here, Nathan, you said this is funny.
Yes,
but it's also really sad.
Yes,
because someone thought this was a good idea.
Okay,
and then more people went to it to actually seek advice.
Right.
And what's sad is I have a feeling some people believed it.
Here's the question. Did people go to it legitimately thinking this is advice, or did they go to it thinking, oh, this might be, let's see what it says.
Have you seen? God bless you.
Wow.
That was powerful.
I had a mighty sneeze.
Yeah. Have you seen the things that people believe and do in our world today?
Yeah, so many
people probably thought this was a legitimate priest replacement in their lives.
Well, it's quicker access than a normal priest.
So can I use the AI priest for like confession?
All right.
That's probably a lot easier than having to go down to the church and
especially
go sit in the confessional.
If they have it like voice activated. So I don't even have to type in. I can just be like,
speak it.
Forgive me, Father, I have sinned.
And AI
And
Father
AI
Justin says, "You have been forgiven."
And I'm not that party. I
I don't know why I sounded like an actual
No,
robot.
it's gonna talk in Latin. Back to you.
Oh, that's fancy.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's what they used to speak.
So, another question with this.
Okay.
Is the AI, was it just 100% like the people who developed this AI said, just do your thing, use the internet, find whatever you want, do whatever you want? Or did they come up with like the top 100 questions people might ask, put in the answers that they wanted this AI priest to submit?
Right. So how do you train the AI?
How to train a dragon.
It's like how to train a dragon. How to train an AI. How do you train the AI and then make it fine-tuned? Because obviously they fine-tune a lot of this AI stuff. So I don't know. I don't know where they built it. I don't know. I mean, there's a little picture. He looked like a priest.
It's like a really cheesy video game from the 90s.
It looks like a really bad video game from the 90s. Father Justin.
Speaking of bad video games from the 90s,
he actually like talked.
I need to play some more of those for our youth page.
Yeah, we're gonna do that this summer for sure. So yeah, what happens is there a certain point where you get like the Church of the Robot, where it's like the AI priest is who you go to for your confessions and sacraments, and it's like an embodied robot.
Wasn't there VR church?
There is
for a little
VR
bit.
church.
Oh, there still is.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
There's plenty of them.
I don't know how that works.
So I will tell you. Okay, so I've done some research on this, and I'm actually reading a book about it right now called Virtual Reality Church.
Okay.
Now there is
written by a professor from Moody.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. One of Mickey actually had him as a professor.
Yep.
So one of the things is that you can have like Life Church does a VR church, and what it is, it's almost like a movie theater room, and on the movie theater screen, it's playing just their live stream.
So I'm standing in my living room with my VR headset on and my little walking controllers because I don't have the magic rug that you can walk on.
Sure.
Have you seen that? That's another news story.
No, super cool.
So I use my joysticks to walk to church. Can I drive to church?
You can teleport to church.
Teleport to church.
Okay. Yeah.
Sit down in a movie theater.
Now, you walk in and another person walks up and it's got like voice, like they're talking, you can hear them.
So there's a live person.
Thanks so much for joining us here at Life Church on our VR campus.
Church representative.
Yeah.
Like staff.
Yeah.
Huh. This sounds
volunteer.
Slightly better than just watching church online because there's at least an element of
right. And then every other person there you can interact with in a more like, hi, how's it going? My name's Joe.
Since it's in a movie theater setting, can I get popcorn on my way in?
Yes.
Can I throw popcorn at other congregants?
No. Sure. I'll allow it.
Yes.
Now, so they have things like that, and a few churches do that. Now, there have been even a few where they actually preach like one of the Avatar people, not like the Last Airbender or the Blue people, but one of the people in the VR is actually.
So you're not actually watching a video of Craig Groeschel.
Right. So not at Life Church, but other VR churches, have done actual
Life
services.
Church, though, I'm sitting and watching Craig Groeschel's video,
correct.
Right? Okay.
Now here's what's really interesting.
He's the pastor of Life Church, if you didn't know.
This is the big question, and actually it specifically is going to address this in the book, and so I'm curious what their take is. There are some churches that will do baptisms in VR as well,
right?
And so these are it's a very strange sight. If you're in a virtual environment, you've got like Winnie the Pooh, Sonic the Hedgehog, and 2 anime characters standing around while a hot dog gets baptized. It's a little strange. So the question is a virtual baptism legitimate? Now, we don't need to answer this right now. So what I want you to do, we're gonna sit on that for a minute. We're gonna let it soak in.
Let it simmer.
What I want you to do is email us podcast@dfchurch.com, podcast@dfchurch.com, or comment on the video below. Let me know, do you think getting baptized in virtual reality is legitimate? And as a quick thing to think about before you just rush to type or give us an answer, is baptism salvific? Is it what saves you? Or is it just something symbolic to show your faith in a public way? What's the point of baptism? Like, think through all these before you just come to an answer. Like, think through it a little bit and let us know what you think. Because I'm not going to tell you what my thoughts are, and it might not be what you think.
Right.
they
We don't
are,
want to answer it yet because
but
we want to wait.
I'd be curious. Let us know what you think.
Okay.
All right.
Love
So
it.
that was the fun news. Now the sad news, we'll talk about as it's happening, a specific church and the issues they're dealing with, and this is tragic. Have you heard about this pastor's wife who just passed away?
Yes.
Okay. So when this first broke,
Supposed suicide,
it was on TikTok is where I first
GSW.
saw it. Right. And so what happened, he announced at the end of the second service, hey, I've got some news. I don't want you guys to talk about this here in the building. I want you to just leave after I'm done here. But my wife died last night. Okay. Already kind of a strange way. We'll get back to these because I want to go through some of the different pieces. So then he was saying she died through suicide, self-inflicted. And immediately every comment was like, no, he did it. He's guilty. He did it.
Right.
Everywhere. And then every video I saw after that was people saying, here's why this guy's sketch. Here's all the negative things. Like he has already been out with a new girlfriend, being seen with her. This was already his second marriage. He met this wife when she was 14. He was her youth pastor. Like a lot of sketchy stuff for sure. Like coming out about their relationship. And then it turns out she had served him divorce papers like 48 hours. So then people are saying, why would she kill herself if she had just, why bother submitting divorce papers if that's your plan? Anyway, the next phase of it, the police reported, it was self-inflicted.
Right.
And I'm guessing, they can tell from angle
there's
of
a lot,
the wound and if there's gunpowder residue on your hands. And I'm sure there's so many different factors they look at. Then they released that there's a 911 tape from her saying she wants to make sure her family would find her. Can you trace this phone? Right. And then they were able to.
Right.
Okay. So it seems like he did not do it.
Right.
But it also seems like he's kind of a scuzzball.
Right.
Okay. What was crazy to me is also immediately after the 911 call came out and everything, the comments and the TikTok videos I was seeing were like, oh, well, I think it was an AI did her voice, or it was the girlfriend. Oh, wait, no, the girlfriend has an alibi. Okay, it was AI, or she did it under duress, or it was so much like the immediate conclusion was made that he did it.
Right.
And so everything else had to then be reinterpreted. And it's it's obviously a complicated situation, and it's a really tragic situation.
Absolutely.
Like I said, this guy sounds like a total scuzzball from a lot and we can dive back into some of those other factors. And but even then, how every news story gets filtered in through your initial assumption on it. For instance, it sounds like the denomination he's a part of said they released him from his ministerial duties for the time being. As I read their statement, it was like, as he goes through this, we're letting him, not having him have to worry about his stuff while he can get, some time off and some counseling and, whatever else he needs. Yeah. It sounded like that was kind of a nice thing they were doing. Like, hey, you don't have to do anything. But so many were saying, look, he got let go. He got fired. Right. They know he did something wrong. It's like, well, but was it that the reason? I don't know.
Right. So scuzzball or not, that's not necessarily my place to judge because I don't know him personally, and it's only stories and assumptions people are making online outside of the way he announced it. But yeah, I mean, trauma makes us say and do things that don't make sense publicly.
And that was the one thing I was thinking. It's like it's so hard to figure to judge somebody else's response to traumatic information. Now, I would say I can't imagine, no matter what, trying to preach 12 hours after finding out your wife died.
Right.
I don't care if I just found out, I would be calling you or Rick or somebody if I was scheduled to preach and be like, hey, I'm not coming in. You're preaching. Figure something out.
Right.
Now, maybe he was the only person at this church who could preach, but again, figure out something.
Right.
Why would you do that?
The unfortunate reality of the world we live in is we have access quickly and easily to every side of every story.
Yeah.
The good news is we have access to information and facts. We just choose not to find those. So
Right.
what we do is we make up a story in our head. We have our own head canon of everything.
Right.
And so I will find everything that agrees with me.
Right.
And then it just perpetuates that whatever
Right.
lie or truth. It just continues to push that story.
Right.
And then the more I search for that, the more it shows up in all of my other feeds. So it's like, well, it must be true because I'm seeing it from everywhere.
Right. The entire point of all of our discovery algorithms, not discovery, our church algorithms, but the algorithms that power our social media,
Right.
they call them discovery algorithms, and they are built and they are effective when they show you what you want to see. Because if you're seeing what you want to see, you're going to be in there more, right? If I see something I don't want to see, I'm not going to keep watching TikTok.
Right.
Right. But if I see stuff that I do want to see, I'm going to be like, okay, I'll watch another one. It's going to hook you in. And so they are built and benefit by showing you what you already want to see, not challenging what you want to see. And so I think you're right. I think it's so much just kind of feeding into itself. And so if that's the
sad.
case, how beyond just this story in general, as Christians who are trying to be discerning with their lives, how do you get out of your algorithm?
Delete everything.
But then you're never going to know what's going on in the world. Isn't knowing important news? Like, what if China nukes Germany? I want to know.
Do you think we were designed by God to take on the hurt and trauma of the entire world? We don't have that capacity, which is why I think we have so much like depression and mental health issues, because we're taking on more than we were designed to. Only God himself can take that on, right? And so we have, the more instant access we have to all the bad things in the world that are happening, the more that affects our brains. Like, I was talking with someone recently who was actually talking about how they deleted all their social media, like halfway through COVID. I don't even know what that means. Several months into COVID, right? Into the shutdown and stuff, because they realized that it was just bringing them down. And she said, as like a family, husband and wife, they've never been happier. Like, they're experiencing so much more joy. The important news still finds them. The world news still finds them. They don't have to be scrolling through and just getting all, because again, our hearts and our minds weren't designed to take all that on.
So you're saying ignorance is bliss?
I'm saying ignorance in a lot of areas is very bliss.
I don't know. I think it's tough because it's
Is that a
like,
NoFX album?
What?
Ignorance is bliss. There's a punk album called Ignorance is Bliss. Anyway,
it's a tough line to walk, because on the one hand, it's like we can't just stick our head in the sand and pretend there's not problems in the world.
Right, but there's enough problems in your home, in your neighborhood, in your church, in your community that will take your entire life to navigate.
I like it.
Let's go back 100 years.
Okay.
Travel back. Let's go back 1,000 years.
I wish I had a time machine.
What type of news were people getting?
Well,
That was bad grammar, I think. I'm sorry.
1,000 years?
1,000 years ago. What?
Okay.
How did I get my news?
You only heard about what was in your village.
Praise the Lord. 100 years. How did I get my news?
Well, in the newspaper. So
Yeah,
you got some national
It was
news,
a
the
slow
stuff that
delivery. I
was-
got some stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess 100 years ago was 1924. It's 2024, guys. 200 years ago. Not 100. Let's go 200. 1824.
Oh boy, yeah. If you were in a big city, you had a newspaper. Otherwise, you heard what was in your town
Yeah.
or what came in on the train. Hey,
I love it.
The guy traveling, you might have a traveling.
A traveling news guy.
Pastor? No.
Oh,
Who
traveling
comes
pastor.
in and he'll give you the tea. as
Oh, he
preaches.
spilled the tea off the train. That's weird.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But people also died a lot earlier and had to deal with disease and a lot of misinformation.
Right. I'm here. I
don't know
love
if it's better.
I love the world I live in. I'm not saying, God, I wish you would have had me born 100 years ago. That would have been so much better. But what I am saying is maybe, just maybe, we are over consuming.
100%.
Which could tie into
I don't
maybe some of our
disagree with
key
that.
discussion here about overconsumption.
Overconsumption. I like that idea. Here's the thing.
Because you're hungry, it's lunchtime.
Yeah, because I'm hungry for lunch. No, if you were to go back 100 years, you would be there just about the time when they invented splinter-free toilet paper.
Praise the Lord for that.
So anytime you think you should live in an earlier time, just imagine the living conditions.
Right. Nathan, aren't
For
you the one?
vast majority of our past.
Aren't you the one who like dreams of just having this compound that you live on?
Sometimes. Yeah. Like just
Sometimes that sounds really nice.
Right? Or like an underground like bunker. And so when the nukes all drop and everything just blows up anyway, and you just have to live in a little vault.
Do you at least have a sensor to know that happens? So stay down for a little longer.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've got, or
because you don't want to accidentally pop out for some fresh air right when that nuke drops.
Right. No. You go down there when the nukes start dropping, and then you know how long you have to wait.
So Jeremiah, our producer, said, "Live life with my crew and not worry about all the world."
I mean, I guess.
And then, quoting Romans 8, "Be innocent of evil."
But where would the world be if we didn't at least have some people who did care about that? Like, think about the massive like changes that have happened, like ending the slave trade only happened because people cared beyond their village.
Here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's the right thing for the whole world. I'm saying it's probably the right thing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And maybe not the right thing for a lot of people.
It's tough.
But
how do you know if you're one of those world changers? Everybody wants to be a world changer, but we don't want to change the person next door to us. It's like we want to say, let's stop trafficking in the world. But do we even like know what happens across the street from us?
All right. Let's pin that. Pin world changers, but not neighbors, and then pin the overconsumption.
Like tuberculosis.
Let's bring back those two phrases when we get into our main topic.
Okay.
All right.
Well, let's move out of the news into our Bible segment. As always, I haven't mentioned it because we've been having weird podcasts lately, but don't forget we are reading the Bible in a year, and we want you, that's right, you, to read along with us. Even if you haven't jumped in yet, you can always jump in now. Any Bible is better than no Bible. You can find the link in the podcast description. You can find the link on the YouTube video. You can jump in. You can read the Bible with us. Matt, what has jumped out at you in the reading lately?
Well, it's been like 3 weeks since we've talked about this.
I know. So you can mention anything. Like you can go back to Judges and Samson if you want. He's crazy.
So Judges is fun. Right, we talked about that. I think a few weeks ago. There's a lot of
jammed in the head.
There's a lot of super unique stories that happen.
Samson is tearing a lion in half.
It's so good,
as one does a young goat. Which,
well, I mean, why wouldn't you?
That's a weird phrase. Here's the thing about Samson, real quick. While we're thinking back to things we read in the Bible app, he's just wandering down the road. He rips a lion in half, as would you do to a young goat. It says, and he's like, "Oh, that was fun." Then he comes back later, and bees have put a hive in it, and they're making lion blood honey. Okay? Weird. He scoops it out and eats it and gives it to his friends. Like, hey, got some honey for you. Can't tell you where it came from because you'd be disgusted. And they're like, sweet. Okay.
Delicious.
Then he's like, all right, guys, it's wedding time. I got a riddle for you. And he then gives them like a line that would reference back to this lion thing that only he knows about. How is that a riddle? That's just an impossible question.
I think that's the point.
But I don't think that's a riddle. It's like in The Hobbit when Bilbo just offhandedly is like, what is in my pocket? And Gollum thinks that that's the riddle. And he's like, how am I supposed to know? And it turns out that's not a riddle. That's the whole point. How is that a riddle? That's my question.
I don't know.
It's not.
If we had that time machine, you can go back and ask him and be like, bruh.
Samson is cheating.
I mean,
and then he
had good reason.
And then they're like, well, we're not going to figure this out. And so then they get the wife. She nags him until he gives up the answer. And he says, if you hadn't plowed with my heifer. And then he goes and he murders everybody and gets some bloody clothes and says, here's your prize.
Look, if you plow with my heifer, I might go on a rampage too.
Yeah, he did. And then in my translation, it didn't say foxes with torches. It said jackals.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, what jumped out at you from the Bible? Because that was
good. Let's go to, I felt a little bit of negativity from you in that. So we also just got to finish last week going through Ephesians again. And if anyone knows me, they know I'm a fan of that letter from Paul. I think it's pretty powerful and meaningful in our context today.
So something that's kind of fun about Ephesians, I was reading about this. It doesn't in the oldest texts does not say to the church in Ephesus. It says to the church in, basically, and it stops, and it doesn't have a place. Now, a lot of people have wondered, why doesn't it have?
Because his hand cramped up as he was writing, and then forgot that.
So there's a couple weird things about Ephesians. First of all, the more critical side says it's not even really Paul,
right?
Whatever. But one of the cool things in this study is how it's like we're reading through Acts, and then when he goes to a city, we read the letter there. He was in Ephesus for a while. He knew the people in Ephesus really well, but we don't have any of the familiarity that we get in other letters. We don't have the specific names, and it doesn't even seem to reference specific events. It almost feels much more generic. And there's a theory. There was also another early church heretic named Marcion who referenced a letter of Paul to Laodicea, which we don't ever seem to have.
Right.
There's a theory that Ephesians was actually written as a cyclical letter. And so it says to the church in, and it has a blank.
So that
the person who's doing it, you just fill in the name of your city.
Sweet.
And so they think that's also potentially what the letter to the Laodiceans that Marcion thought was the same letter.
Interesting.
And that it was intended to just be read to multiple churches and kind of, hey, this is for everybody. This is just for the church.
So does that mean that next time we preach through it, we can just say to the church in Fort Collins in northern Colorado and whatever we want to do? Sweet.
You could, as you're introing it, you could say you can read it as that.
Yeah.
And Ephesians is great.
To me, that makes it even better.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because it isn't, in like Corinth, he's dealing with specific issues that happen in Corinth, right?
Right.
Whereas this is just like, this is good for the whole church at all times. Not that Corinthians isn't, but this is much more intended for general
and I love
churchiness.
Kind of how it's split into two parts, right? The first 3 chapters is all about who God is and what he's done for you and now your new identity in Christ.
Right.
And then the last 3 chapters are how you live out that new identity. Right. So the order to me matters, right? Your identity is what is most important. And then what we do comes from that identity, right? And so if my identity is in anything but Christ, then what I do is not going to line up with his will, his plan, his mission, his desires. And so it's good stuff.
It is really good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let's go into our main topic then. Finally, we'll get there. Although I kind of like taking some of this longer time to really dig deep into some of these other things, because especially when we talk about Bible stuff, it's always really fun. Again, let us know. Are you reading the Bible with us? What have you thought? For our main topic today, though, Matt, again, you've mentioned this. We've been traveling. There's been a lot of things happening one way or the other. But the reason we were traveling, and if you watched last week's episode, you saw we were at a discipleship conference, a couple days of just very intensive how to become a discipling church. Now, in last week's episode, Matt and I both kind of interviewed a lot of the other people who were there with us, kind of putting out ideas of what they all picked up from it. Now, in all of that, you and I never really got a chance to talk about what jumped out to us from all of that. And so I thought today, let's spend a little bit of time kind of continuing the conversation from last week, but kind of diving in a little bit deeper into what jumped out to you.
Yeah. So I think maybe an important place to start. You said we went to a discipleship conference.
Yeah.
That's a very churchy word.
Yes, it is.
What does it mean? Not the word conference. Discipleship. What does discipleship mean?
We also get the word discipline from it.
Okay.
Oh, that's exciting. Disciple in this context.
So exciting.
It's so exciting. I don't know. In this context, what we mean by disciple is a follower of Jesus who then, as a disciple, I am disciplined in my approach to becoming more and more like him. And so to be a disciple maker or disciple making church is fulfilling what Jesus said, which is go and make disciples of all nations, which is go out and teach others how to become more like Jesus. Okay. And it is really important to distinguish it between a disciple and a convert, right? A convert, it'd be like, hey, do you want to follow Jesus? Billy Graham crusade, they say yes. And then you say, all right, good luck, right? Like the conversion is that moment you decide to follow Jesus, but a disciple is more than just a momentary decision, but it's a lifestyle of becoming more like Jesus.
Okay. I like that. Now, doesn't our English word disciple come from the Latin word like discipulus?
Yes,
Discipulus?
I think that's right.
I don't speak Latin, but I think that's it.
I can ask my kids.
It basically means like follower, student of.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we say discipleship, that's it. It's a student of, a follower of Jesus.
Yes.
And so we went to this conference that was all about discipleship, but it wasn't about necessarily like us being discipled, right? The conference wasn't,
Right.
Nathan, let me help you follow Jesus better.
Right.
The conference was geared towards church leaders about how we can really, as a local body, take serious the charge from Christ to make disciples of all nations.
Right.
What does that actually look like? And so it was a lot.
Well,
It was a big
lot.
It was 36 hours was the actual conference time.
Wow.
Obviously we slept at night and stuff, but like it started essentially noon on Wednesday and finished at 5 on Thursday. And so it wasn't a very long conference. I've been to conferences that were 4 days, 5 days long of content that whole time.
Right.
But I felt like we consumed, back to that word, a whole lot
Okay.
in that short amount of time. And so we took 15 of us. I don't know if you mentioned that last week. I don't remember.
I'm not sure if I did. No.
It's been a week and I don't
Yeah.
remember things from this morning. So we took 15 of us from our church to go and learn. We haven't talked together as a whole group yet. We're
Right.
meeting next week to kind of come together and share and start to figure out and pray through, okay, God, what do you want for your church at Discovery?
Right.
And kind of look through what's next. And so a lot of the challenge, I guess, for us to think through was, are we doing church the way that God would want us to do church?
Yeah.
And I think that's good for everyone to think through. Like, is the way that you are living out your faith actually what God has called us to do?
Right.
I think if we're honest, for a lot of us, we're going to say no.
One of the stats that they had at this conference was when you talk about disciple making and a church that is disciple making, we're talking about a church that is on track with their disciples who disciple others, right?
Okay.
So I've made disciples who have gone out and made disciples, self-replicating, increasing. And they had said that it's about 5% of churches that actually are. And so the question is exactly the right one, Matt, is why are 95% of churches not living out what Jesus called us to do?
Yeah, that's honestly 5% is actually a little higher than I was expecting it to be. I think a lot of it is a culture has been created the last 70 years, since like the 50s, in our Western evangelicalism, the American church, where we are comfortable in our Christianity, right? We've lived in a Christian nation where I'm not persecuted for my faith at all.
Right.
There's no like actual sacrifice that I really have to make in order to claim to be a Christ follower. In fact, for many years, the assumption was, well, if you're American, you're a Christian.
Right. It was a cultural concept of like, well, I just go to church. It's what you do on a Sunday. Like, why wouldn't you go to church?
Right.
You go to church and then you just do whatever you want the rest of the week.
Right. And so we started to build this program-focused ministry that was all about you as the consumer, not being actual disciples of Jesus. And so we would come to church, we would have the professional paid pastor, PPP, who would stand up, give us a feel-good message, warm my soul a little bit, make me feel good as I head into my week at work, get some songs that I connected with, my style of music, because I can just go to a different church down the road. And this has been developing over the last 70 years, right? It didn't start. It started here, but it's taken time to get to where we are today.
I mean, it's been for even longer than that in some ways. Like you're kind of mentioning something that one of the sessions talked about, this group called the Church Project, how it's starting almost around like maybe 300 AD. the church started to go a little bit off track.
That's crazy to think
Which
about.
is really crazy to think about, because it's this idea, and I liked what they talked about, which is when Jesus started the church, it was decentralized in terms of location and decentralized in terms of authority. He did not just say, here's the Old Testament system, and we're going to just import that into the New Testament church. We kind of then immediately reverted it back to that, because what he said is like, you are the church, like all the people gathered are the church, whether that's in your house, at the synagogue, whatever. You are the church, and it's not about a specific priest who has to go and be the in-between between you and God. Jesus has done that, and so that we can just draw near to God ourselves. We don't need a priest or anybody else. We don't need, really, our pastor is not our conduit to God. And I think we've even seen it now where people are saying like, oh man, I need something spiritual or prayer or something. I better talk to a pastor because they've got the inside track, even if they don't say it this way. They've got the inside track to God, so I better talk to them, as opposed to saying I can go to God. My pastor's there to help equip me and build me and teach me to disciple, but they're not any more spiritual or better or closer to God or equipped for discipling or evangelism or any of that stuff. And so at a certain point, that's why I say around 300 AD, it was like, let's move back to a sacred space, the church, which is just like the temple again, and let's get back to the sacred people, like the priests who are going to run it and be the in-between. Right. It's kind of in a funny way. If you remember way back on this podcast, we had interacted with another guy I saw on TikTok, a German guy, who had said, what was it? Prohibition, something, I can't even remember his channel name anymore. Anyway, he was Prohibition Theology. Yeah. That's what he called it. And his whole thing was that like the church was completely off base. Right. And we had a lot of issues with what he said and a lot of disagreements with what he said. But some of what he said is kind of the same stuff as what we're saying right now as well. Yeah. And so to your point, the way, especially in modern America with a consumeristic mindset, 1,000 years ago, all right, so you would have in England just only the Catholic Church, but your village would have the one church. That's the only church you could go to. And your community was going to that church every week, but then you were in that community the rest of the week and potentially living out what it meant to try to follow Jesus in that context as best you could understand it. Maybe they didn't have their own Bible. They didn't have even the language of the Bible always to understand, but they at least were able to have that smaller community mindset. Whereas today it's, you can go to any church you want. You can find one that does what you want, and it's about a product that you're consuming. Right. And so again, the final thing to your point, and then I'll let you talk again. The form of church that we have adopted has, it's kind of a chicken or the egg, right? Did we adopt this form of church because our culture was pushing towards this consumeristic mindset anyway? Did adopting a form of church that was conducive to this mindset make it more ingrained that that's the way we do church? Did they both feed on each other? I don't know. Interesting. So all that's to say, what do we do about it?
Right. I think obviously a culture shift has to happen if we're going to get back to the commands of Scripture. Right. That doesn't mean that your local church goes away. Right. Right. And so like this is something we have to wrestle through, because this is our vocation. We're local church pastors. Right. Like this is how we provide for our family also. Right. So there's an element of this where it could be scary, but I don't think the whole thing is broken. So prohibition theology, that guy, I think he would say, blow it all up. Right. Everything stinks. You're all wrong. Right. Church project guy, I think, would say, we have some elements that we're doing right. We just got to put our focus in the right areas. Right. Okay. So you mentioned kind of the whole equipping the saints for the work of the ministry. Right. Right. Speaking of Ephesians, right? Ephesians chapter 4 talks about how God has given gifts to certain people. Right. Apostles, prophets, evangelists, teachers, shepherds, right? Yeah. To equip the saints for the work of the ministry. Right. So instead of me as a churchgoer saying, hey, neighbor, come to my church so my pastor can preach to you.
Right.
No. It's pastor, how do I share my faith with my neighbor?
Right.
Pastor helps equip you, and you say, hey, neighbor, let me tell you about my Jesus.
Love
right?
it.
Like it's a mind shift we have to take where now my Sunday morning church going, corporate worship matters.
Yes.
Coming together to praise God together matters.
100%.
Fellowship matters.
Yeah.
Good exposition of the Bible and getting a sermon that equips me as a follower of Jesus to go and do and be the hands and feet of Jesus in my community matters.
Right.
If that's all I do, I show up on a Sunday morning, those three things happen. I go about my week. I come back, I do it again next week.
Right.
I think I've missed the point of Scripture.
Right. You're taking in a lot of food, but you're never doing any, you're never digesting it and moving and doing anything with it. Right.
Yeah, I'm not turning those calories into energy.
Right.
If we're using the food.
Right. You're just becoming a fat and sassy Christian.
Sloth. Yeah. A fat and sassy Christian.
Crusted over with fussiness.
Crusted over with fussiness.
You're not
Jeremiah says no
exercising it.
exercise.
Yep.
I like that.
Exactly. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, that's a lot of what the church has. It's a lot of stuff coming in,
right?
But nothing ever, we're spiritually constipated.
Right. So again, speaking of Ephesians, we love Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, but we ignore verse 10. Right. Ephesians 2, 8, 9 says, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith, not of yourselves. It's a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. So it's Jesus, I place my faith in you. You've saved me.
Right.
Hallelujah. I'm going to sit on my couch, watch some football, and eat some snacks.
Yep.
But verse 10
what
says,
is the exact next verse?
So that, right? Like there's you've been saved for.
Right.
To do the work, right?
Right.
That he prepared in advance for you to do, which means that if I say, God, I believe I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I place my faith in his death and resurrection. I surrender my life to him. And then I don't do the work that God has prepared in advance for me to do. I'm going to call it out. It's sin. We're going against a direct command from God and a direct call on our life. And so the reason I said we put a pin in that consumer thing, because it comes up right here. We've created a culture of consumer Christians. Wow, I have the alliteration going today. This is good.
Like
We've created a culture of consumer Christians where it is all about what you as the church can do for me as the Christian. And if I don't like what you said, how you looked, the smell of the sanctuary on a Sunday morning, the music, what the person on stage was wearing during the music, then you have failed me and I'm going to take my tithes elsewhere. Right. And so as church leaders, now here's where I'm going to call out the church pastors now.
Okay.
We've become so afraid of our congregation that we now refuse to actually speak the truth. We're watering things down so that everyone feels happy and comes to church and gives their tithe so that we can still run all the ministries we're doing, so that we can still get a salary, so that we can still keep the lights on at this beautiful building we have. We've now put the power in the hands of the people instead of the power in the hands of the Savior. And so I think that's where, as church leaders, we have to really reevaluate, who do I serve first? Am I serving my community first, or am I serving God first? If I serve my community first, I think I'm going to lose.
Right.
If I say I serve my God, but I ignore my community, I'm going to lose. I have to serve my God first. And out of that service and sacrifice and surrender to him, my heart is for the nations. My heart is for the people. And because of God and what he's done for me and my commitment to serving him, I'm going to speak the truth in love, even if that hurts, even if that means I lose a couple congregants because they can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth, right? But I'm going to then start to serve out of my relationship with God, and not out of my desire to build my platform. And in the American church, we have this focus on my platform. Right. So I'm going to, and that church project guy has said his name's not on the website at all.
Right.
But when you go to other churches, what do you see?
Them.
It's all about that one person.
Right.
I am the lead pastor of this church.
Right.
Look at me. Right.
Yep.
It's all about me.
Yeah.
Serve me. I don't think any of them are going to say that, but you get that vibe. Right. Yeah. And so we have to be super careful to not fall into the trap of being just a Sunday Christian or a consumer Christian, but rather looking at this community that God has called me to and how I can serve it because of my connection with God. Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up this main topic, then what is, I mean, I know we don't have a definitive answer right now.
Yeah.
But what's the next step? And this isn't, like we said, this isn't a discovery issue if 95% of churches are failing at this. What is the next step?
Yeah. So you mentioned the world changer thing, right? Everybody wants to be a world changer. But then I'm like, but I can't be a world changer because I'm just one person. I can't do anything. So I'm going to do nothing. Right. And you said, but we're not doing anything with our neighbor. So what we do, Christ follower, if you're listening to this, watching this, what you do, who's your one, right? If you want to change the world, it starts with one. Who are you praying for? Who are you discipling? Who are you mentoring? Who are you pointing to Jesus? Who are you loving, right? We get so self-focused in every area of our life. And I get it, we're busy. We have big schedules. But what is more important than sharing the love of Jesus with the world? There are people who are lost and going to hell and living a life of meaninglessness, right? And we're so focused on not being bothered to say hi to my neighbor, not being bothered to invite someone over and have a conversation with them, not being bothered to say, how can I pray for you to someone, right? We're very self and inward focused. And I think step one is we need to stop, right? So right now, say, God, who is it that you've put in my life that I can be a positive influence for, that I can point towards you, that I can share my faith with?
Yeah.
It's scary. You might not be successful every time.
Right.
But the problem is we've turned our prayer life. I'm getting on a lot of soapboxes right now, but we've turned our prayer life into very safe and comfortable prayers, right? God, help me to not lose my temper with my kids today.
Right.
God, what's your will for my life? God, give me safe travels to work today. All those things are important, but they're all very safe prayers.
Right.
Those do not require me to make any big change. One of the sessions I was in, they actually said, we need to stop praying sissy prayers.
That's pretty funny.
And part of that was asking God, what is your will for my life? And when you said that, I was like, what do you mean? Don't we want to find out what God's will for our life is so that we can pursue it?
Right.
And they said, instead, we should say, God, what is your will? We look at scripture, God, what is your will? Period. End of story.
Right.
And then my life conforms to that will, as opposed to, here's my life, God. Here's the things I have going on. Here's my schedule. How can I fit you in there? What you going to do in these areas? Sometimes it requires massive shakeup. And I'm not saying you have to quit everything, though maybe you have to quit everything to pursue God's will. But we have to start by saying, God, what is your will?
Right.
Give me your eyes, your heart, your love for the people around me. Yes, you've placed me here, but your will for Fort Collins is the same as your will for Nigeria.
Right.
It's his glory to the nations, right? We're called to disciple the nations.
Yeah.
My nation right now is here in Northern Colorado.
Yeah.
To be faithful to God's will doesn't mean I have to go down to Mexico on a mission trip. That might be part of it. But if that's all I ever do once a year for a week,
right,
then I'm missing it. I'm missing his will because I have neighbors who don't know Jesus.
Right.
I have people I interact with at the coffee shop who don't know Jesus, whatever it might be for you. You have coworkers who don't know Jesus.
Hopefully you don't.
I mean, I might. Nathan, do we need to have a conversation? That's why I said you, and I looked at the camera instead of you.
I'm joking.
But yeah, I think for us to take seriously the call to disciple the nations, each of us individually has to start with one. Imagine what that would look like if every single Christ follower was actually purposefully discipling someone. And then that person they disciple was discipling someone.
Right.
And then the world would change
growth.
so quickly if we actually took God's call seriously. And so the challenge, friends, is to take seriously this call, right? And that doesn't mean I find someone who, that doesn't mean that I start discipling Nathan and Nathan disciples me. That's not what this is. That means that that neighbor who doesn't know Jesus,
Right.
I start with that conversion. I introduce them to Jesus, and then I walk with them on this journey. I disciple them. They might be older than me,
Right.
but spiritually, I'm further along in my relationship with Jesus, so I have the opportunity to lead and guide them. But that also probably means that I need to find someone in my life who's coaching me, because if I only ever give out,
Right.
I'm going to run on empty pretty quick. Now, thankfully, we have a God who never runs on empty, and he
Sure.
can always overflow and provide everything we need. But honestly, if you don't have someone discipling you, start there. Find someone who you can be honest with, open with, share your struggles with, who's going to hold you accountable, who's going to say, hey, who have you talked to this week? And then find that person who you're going to talk to this week. We met with Greg Steer on our podcast a few weeks ago. And he talked about, I don't know if we had this part on air or not, but at some point we were talking about, I thanked him for his example, right? Because he's a mentor to a lot of people that he doesn't realize it, because I see his example fairly regularly of him sharing his faith with other people, complete random strangers. And he actually mentioned how he doesn't post all of them.
Right.
Because he doesn't want the focus on him. And I love that. But he posts some key ones every now and then that I think maybe, I don't know what his strategy is with it, but I love the one he posted recently. He took his family on a vacation to Disney World.
Okay.
And something happened. They were trying to get help from the front desk on something. He ended up asking the front desk person for her story, because what's cool about Disney World is they have people from all over the world who work there, right? And some work for a long time, some work just for a short period. He asked her story, ends up sharing Jesus with her. She places her faith in Jesus.
Oh, wow.
And like, it's just a super cool thing that he interrupted his vacation for.
Right.
How many of us would interrupt our vacation to share our faith with a stranger, right? Like, we paid money for that trip. I'm going to maximize every possible moment, but he takes serious the call to like share Christ with everyone everywhere always.
That's awesome.
And so I think we could do well to at least start with one, right?
Right.
It might not be successful every time.
No,
and that's okay. In fact, I will say, every time you share your faith, you probably aren't going to lead someone to Jesus in that moment. There are going to be moments of it just didn't land, it didn't hit, you fumbled over words. That's okay. You were faithful to God's call. And that's what matters. He's going to use it. He's going to grow it. You're successful because you're obedient. You're not successful because someone placed their faith in Jesus. Their response to the gospel is not my responsibility.
Right. Which
my
takes so much of the
responsibility is
pressure
to
off.
share. It takes so much pressure off. It's so freeing to know that my responsibility is just to share who Jesus is and what he's done for me.
Definitely.
And God's faithful to take care of the rest.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I think we're going to wrap up the main topic there. Fortunately, this is not going to be like, this concept isn't like a one and done thing, right? This is not the only time we're going to be.
This should be interwoven in every conversation we have.
Every single conversation should have elements of this. This should be something that you'll be hearing about, whether you're a part of Discovery or not. If you're at a church, this is an encouragement for you. Like, help them to be a discipling church if they're not already. Maybe you're one of the 5%. And if so, email us, podcast@dfchurch.com. Let us know how your church became a discipling church. But however it is, like, discipleship matters, and it is going to be we're going to have to repeat things a lot probably to get ourselves kind of thinking about it. And so if you hear it a lot, that's why.
Awesome.
I love it. Well, let's move into our AI segment. Now, Matt, what I asked it this week is hilarious based off the story that you started with today. I asked, what are the top 10 best coffee flavors for church Sunday morning service?
So I forgot that I started with that story.
You started talking about your terrible bad coffee.
Lukewarm, bitter, disgusting.
Spew it from your mouth. Now, none of these are real coffee flavors.
Ew.
These are the flavors they would say if you wanted flavored coffee for church.
Okay.
Here's what your flavors should be.
So I'm creating a flavored coffee and I'm naming it this.
Yes.
Got it.
Number 10.
I'm excited.
The Garden of Eden apple crumble. Forbidden fruit flavor. Maybe not so forbidden anymore, but definitely a tempting way to start your fellowship. Do you like apple coffee?
No. Can we just say not coffee flavored? How about a Garden of Eden apple crumble cake?
No, this is coffee.
Coffee cake.
And coffee cake would be fine.
Okay.
All right.
Apple crumble coffee cake.
Special bonus, if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see the AI generated images of all of these as well. Number 9, Samson's Strengthening Stout, a robust brew with a strength that could bring down temples or at least morning grogginess.
We're serving beer?
It said stout.
Yeah.
Can you have a stout?
And then it said a
coffee?
brew. Now I know you brew coffee, but
You could do it as a beer also.
it's just like a really dark,
Really dark roast. Yeah.
beyond French roast. What is
Yeah.
that, Vienna roast?
Sure. I don't know.
All right.
Number 8, the Pentecost Peppermint. It's the tongues of fire of coffee flavors, leaving your mouth feeling both refreshed and invigorated.
All right. Can I pause for a second?
Yeah.
I don't like flavored coffee.
I know you
It
don't.
tastes
That's
fake.
what makes
It
this so
tastes
funny.
terrible. It tastes like you covered up just bad bean to begin with
Okay.
and made it worse, much like I did this morning. I covered up bad bean and I made it worse.
But would you like a peppermint Pentecost coffee?
How about a Pentecostal peppermint
Mocha.
tea?
Oh. You can do a peppermint
I
mocha.
like peppermint tea.
Number 7, the baptismal hazelnut. Dunk your senses into this deep, nutty flavor that'll revive any sleepy Sunday
Should have said
spirit.
dunk your sins.
Into the coffee?
Uh-huh.
Donut sins that you dunk in the...
Because of my gluttony.
Now, do you like hazelnut coffee?
No.
Do you
I don't like
you don't like
flavored
any
coffee.
flavor, right?
No.
Okay. I don't like hazelnut.
I like the flavor of good coffee.
I'm there with you. Number 6, Galilee caramel, sweet and miraculous, like walking on water, but for your taste buds.
What?
What does that even mean?
I'm gonna stop picturing flavored coffee bean,
Okay.
and now I'm gonna start picturing more of like the latte frappuccino,
Okay.
because that makes me able to stomach this a little more. This is a caramel macchiato.
All right. Number 5, the Pearly Gates vanilla, a heavenly smooth
Vanilla
flavor
latte.
that's almost as good as walking through those gates.
Almost as good.
So it like kills you. It's so good.
Oh right, because you'd be dead if you're walking through them gates.
Number 4, Jonah Java.
Oh,
For when
that
you
sounds
need,
like a great coffee company.
for when you need something strong enough to get you out of the belly of just 10 more minutes of sleep.
Oh, I thought it was gonna say like just 10 more minutes of the sermon.
Perfect.
I gotta get through this.
I gotta give. Oh my goodness. Number 4, Exodus Espresso.
Oh.
Strong enough to wake you up for a journey through any wilderness or just the early service. Our people need that.
And
Amen. Exodus Espresso.
And it Exodus is right out of you.
It-
Sorry,
Oh,
I should have
goodness.
gone there.
no, that's the Samson one.
Coffee is a natural
Strength to
diuretic,
rip
right?
right through you.
Ew.
Number 2, and this is spelled funny. Original cinnamon.
Oh, I like it.
A little spice
Wait, I don't want to drink that.
to remind you of what started it all. Perfect for those who like a bit of history with their caffeine.
Wait, did spice start it all, or did like a
Sin.
fruit?
So it was it was a spicy fruit.
Okay.
Yeah, cinnamon comes from a tree, right?
Yeah.
Could have been.
Okay. Was
Num-
that one?
Number 1,
Oh, okay.
the Holy Roast for a divine start to your Sunday, blessed by the beans themselves.
That sounds like a good cup of joe.
Well, and it looks like one, except for they can't spell.
Holly roast.
Original cinnamon.
That's fun.
Now, if it wasn't I like the Jonah Java. If it wasn't a flavored coffee or any of those something you're drinking,
The last one, number 1, sounded like
like a
non-flavored.
real
It's just a really good roast.
right? A really good.
The other ones I would drink if it was more of like the macchiato latte, like it was designed to be, as long as it's not the bean that's flavored, because the flavored bean is an abomination.
I'm guessing it's more of a based off the image that everybody else saw, but you didn't get to see yet. It's more of like a macchiato.
Yeah, see, that looks like a caramel macchiato. I would drink that.
Okay.
Yeah, I like those. I usually like them a little less sweet. So if I order something like that from coffee
You
shop,
get
I'll say
quarter
like half
sweet.
sweet or
Oh,
something.
I get a quarter sweet.
Oh,
It's the way to
quarter
go.
sweet.
Quarter sweet.
That
I
sounds
got
like
that
one
from
word.
Alexis.
Quarter
yeah.
sweet.
My wife is one who was like, order it quarter sweet. Hashtag quarter sweet. I don't know if you have to hashtag
It's
it.
going viral.
Well, let's real quick go into our listener mail. We did get, this is from back a few weeks ago when we talked about if a Christian can own a gun.
Oh,
Jeremiah wrote in to
I
say
forgot we talked about
the
that.
AR-15 is a model number from Armalite, just like the PA-15 is a model number from Palmetto State Armory. AR doesn't mean assault rifle. Yeah, we kind of talked about that.
Yep.
The AR platform allows for a modular rifle, and then he goes into a lot of information about cartridges and caliber size. Colorado is currently trying to pass a law outlawing the sale of assault rifles, and it takes 3 pages to list them out of a variety of characteristics. Love Jesus, protect family, have faith, choose yourself. That's how he kind of ends it.
Yeah.
Now, did we talk about on that episode the new law that was going to require insurance for gun owners in Colorado?
I think you mentioned that. Yep.
So that's an interesting.
Is that part of the same law that is potentially going to ban?
I'm not sure.
3 pages worth of
assault rifles, quote unquote. But it's an interesting thing. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah.
You got nothing?
No.
Nothing
additional.
That's the only letter we got. So I need you, whatever you're doing. If you're driving down the road, pull off to the side of the road, open up your phone, type in podcast@dfchurch.com. Send us a letter. Let us know what you think about discipleship, what it looks like in your life to be a discipler. And again, no matter what you're doing right now, stop, take a break. If you're cooking dinner, turn the heat down, let it simmer. If you're taking a shower, jump out of the shower, get on your phone, podcast@dfchurch.com. Where you are, whatever you're doing, I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
This has been episode number 86 of the Faith Life podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to us. Hope you have a great week, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.